I'm Luca Giliberti, contributing writer at Gold Derby, and I am joined today by Pamela Vallarelli and Ali Capriotti Grant, the Emmy-winning casting directors of Netflix's Queer Eye, who just received their third and fourth Emmy nominations, respectively, for their work on the fifth season of the series. First of all, congratulations on your Emmy nomination. And you know what? Let's start right there. Having not only been nominated, but having also won before, how special is it for you to be welcomed back and recognized for your work on Queer Eye by the TV Academy year after year? Ali, let's go to you first.
Well, thank you for your congratulations, first off. To work on Queer Eye, like it's rewarding enough to work on this show and kind of see our heroes on the big screen, watching their journeys, but to be nominated, by the TV Academy, it's incredible. It just kind of, makes us feel like people are watching, people are talking, people are having conversations, and like that's the whole point of the show. So it's really rewarding to know that people are watching at the end of the day, and really special for us to, have an experience like this together, at the Television Academy.
Yeah, Pamela, what about you?
Yeah, and I was going to say thank you as well for the congratulations, but also on a larger scale, just for the TV Academy to be recognizing unscripted television is so important and big and new-ish in the grand scheme of things. So we feel honored to be nominated in that category.
Right, and let's just dive into the fifth season right away. It obviously came out last June, and it took place in Philadelphia and its outskirts. So I would be curious as to why you and your colleagues ultimately decided on the Philly area as the location for the fifth season. Whoever would like to take that one first.
Yeah, I definitely think it's a large conversation that happens between ITV, between Netflix, the Fab Five, everybody sort of weighs in. But we knew that after 4 seasons in the South and Midwest, where else in America could we go that would feel fresh, feel different, and have new types of stories to tell and different types of characters and personalities that you wouldn't find in the Midwest or in the South. So Jersey definitely checked all those boxes, being in the Northeast, you're close to New York, you're close to Pennsylvania, you get a little bit of everything. And a fun fact is Ali is from Philly. So that gave us a leg up of like knowing the ins and outs of the area.
Well, what's so funny is that I like rediscovered the city I had lived in for so many years by like casting this show, because we're boots on the ground, we call it. Like we're in there, we're seeing all the different neighborhoods, like we're making sure that we hit all different types of places, shops and going to sports games and meeting people. And I was like, oh my gosh, I didn't even like, I saw that my own city with new eyes. So that was a special season for me. And I think like a really good one, within, all of the series.
Wow, that's so fascinating that you rediscovered the city. That's such a great experience. So your colleague, Gretchen Palick, has talked about how the casting department takes a twofold approach to finding contestants, not only by accepting nominations and applications, but also having people back in New York, making phone calls and scouring social, and having people like you on the ground scouting the area. So could you talk me through why this approach is so important to you and your colleagues, and what some of the first things you as the location casting directors did when you were on the ground in Philly? Whoever would like to take that.
I think that there's no one way to do this job. There's no manual of here's how to cast a TV show. It's really just spread a wide net and see what sticks or what comes back. So that's why we try to do all of those different avenues of outreach, because you just simply never know where you'll find someone who's amazing.
Yeah, and it's kind of like a dance. Like I like to think of it like, our team who's in the office and our team who's out there, on location, we're communicating constantly. And there's people who are writing in now that it's season 5, people know the show, and they're nominating, their friends and loved ones. So we've got people in the inbox, but then we also, want to go out and just, meet people IRL and talk to people and figure out who might not watch the show. It's always fun when you get someone on the show that has no preconceived notions and is kind of in it for the first time. So we definitely rely on each other, in the office and in the field. Right.
And after you take a look at who's been nominated for consideration or who has just been considered in general, how do you decide on, in this case, which 10 people or whose stories you're going to take up and feature in the upcoming season?
That's the hardest part. It's not easy. There's so many people that I still think of to this day in previous cities who just didn't make it on the show. But ultimately, what we're really looking for is somebody that you want to root for, somebody that you want to get behind, somebody that's so likable and you want to see them transform.
Yeah, vulnerability is another one that we really look for, and everybody opens up. It's like incredible. I always give these people so much credit because sometimes they're telling their story for the first time with us. So they really have to trust us and we have to really trust them. But the people who can really let their walls down, sometimes for that first time, there's beauty in that. And they're going to work well with the Fab Five because they're going to be receptive to like change.
And in that regard, these people have to be incredibly brave because, as you mentioned, they're not only, pouring out vulnerabilities is difficult in itself, but doing so on camera for the world to ultimately see is on a completely different level. So even after you've cast these people, these successful candidates, for the lack of a better term, how often do you have people who still have their walls fully up? And what do you do in that situation?
To be honest, it really doesn't work if they have their walls up because we have such a short amount of time to film the episode. So if we can't visibly see that transformation occur in a week, we don't have an episode.
I think that's why the Fab Five are who they are because they're so skilled. Like I always love a good challenge, right? So like if someone's like, they're taking a little slower to kind of tell you their story, but you believe in them, it's one day at a time, one chip away at a time, trusting us, and then ultimately trusting the Fab Five. And the Fab Five is so good at kind of, saying, well, you know what, I relate to you because of this, my dad, this, my mom, this, like my hometown, this. And, people ultimately, even if they are a little guarded day one, for the most part, have really opened up by the last day.
Right. And it's also the friends and family members of these people who are sharing quite a bit of their personal lives with the world. I'm thinking about in the 5th season, Tyreek's story in particular, and how he and his mother have this reunion and this really deep conversation while being filmed. When you're casting, do you take into consideration the willingness of friends and family members to not only be on screen, but to also be, if need be, vulnerable and personal on screen?
100%. So we definitely try to figure out who's close to this person for multiple reasons. We want to know other people's opinion of this person. Why do you think they should, like, it's one thing for us to think they should be on the show. I want to know, why does your mom think you should be on the show? Why does your grandma think you should be on the show? So even those people that sometimes might not even make it on camera, we have conversations with. So we do feel like we get to know the whole family. And then of course that willingness to be on camera, because for example, in that episode, if she had not been willing to be on camera, that might not have been a part of the story that we chose to tell.
And what is, very special about this show, not only the 5th season, but pretty much every season, is that these seasons, they really feature a variety of different people. So how important is it to you to really feature a diverse group of people and thus an array of different stories?
Yeah, it's hugely important. We're looking for stories we haven't told before, and we want everyone sitting at home to find a little piece of that person and say, oh, I might have a shared experience. That I relate to that person in that way. It's so important for us to showcase different people, every single episode. And when we start a season, we think, what stories haven't we told? Who haven't we shown? And we really try to figure out, how can we do that? How can we tell that story? Especially as times are changing, we want to make sure that our stories are timely as well.
Absolutely. And since some people are nominated by friends or family members or just other people in their lives, have there ever been instances where they were nominated but were not ready to take this step and to tell the story to the world? Or have there been people who were ready at the beginning, who were really game as when they signed up, but then sort of reconsidered in the end?
I think both have happened. I think definitely family and friends saying, oh, my cousin would be perfect. And then they say, what? Are you crazy? No. It is all about timing. And we call it the why now. Like, why now at this moment on Thursday in 2021, are you ready for this change? And everyone's life is different. Everyone's timing is different. So if you're not starting a new life chapter, if you're not ready, now might not be the time for you.
Yeah.
Interesting. And Are you involved in any way in the structuring of the season? So do you get to decide with everyone else which story is placed where? Because I found that launching the season with Pastor Noah was such a profound way. It also, last season aired in June during Pride Month, and to have Pastor Noah sort of launch the season was so spectacular. So are you involved in that process, or is that far removed from your department?
It's a little removed, to be honest. I think we do think about like the arc of the series, we think like, okay, what story feels really different from this story, feels really different from this story, but we don't order them. And I'm kind of glad we don't have to. It's a hard, that's a hard job to kind of figure out who's going to start and then how is the series going to arc, so yeah, we try to give them good options, but we don't actually order them at the end of the day.
Right, it must be very difficult, but they do such a phenomenal job. So is there a particular story from the 5th season that has really stuck with you, or what is something that you have learned about yourself while meeting these different people and getting to know their stories, maybe even some people that we don't get to ultimately see? Pamela, let's go to you first.
Yeah, it's hard because obviously they all hold a special place in our heart and no one's better than the other, but a story that personally resonates with me is Dr. Lily, because she's a working mom, she has a toddler, long hours, and same. So I totally connected to her story and just that struggle of finding that balance between kicking butt at work and also being an amazing parent.
I think for me, a special story in the 5th season was Marcos, because again, I used to live right near the Italian market and I had no idea the families that work there that, make up this beautiful part of the city. And, we saw him as we were walking through. Basically every morning we'd take a walk through the Italian market and we saw Marcos with his fedora on and, his mustache. And we were like, that guy, we have to talk to him. And it was kind of like a magical experience. Like every day we spent with him and filmed with him, we learned something new. I really liked a lot of the father-daughter themes with him and thought that that was really beautiful and that resonated with me. And he built his house from the ground up and he welcomed us for fish that night. It was just a really cool experience. But it is like kind of picking your favorite child. Like we really love all of the heroes is what we call them on, every season.
And when you're planning the next season, is it ever difficult to sort of not get into, I guess, territory that you've already discovered before? Is that something that you don't consider? If you've already explored certain themes, I guess, do you go into the next season not wanting to explore those, or is that something you don't necessarily take into, or primarily take into consideration when you're doing the casting?
I think it really leads with the person and the individual. Like the issues that come up later might be some, there are some universal themes that reoccur. Obviously, family comes up a lot and things like that. But it really starts with the person, like character first, story second.
Yeah. And if we map out, the different themes we haven't hit yet and, and have one person starting on those, it's like, you never know who's going to be in the mix and who's going to be nominated. And we would never say no to someone, to exploring someone, just because their story seemed a little similar, because once you uncover, everyone's like an onion. I mean, no one story is truly like another once you dig.
Absolutely. Every story is dissimilar, even if they look similar on the surface.
Right.
But speaking of upcoming seasons, even though it's now in the works and we know it's taking place in Texas, the production on the 6th season was initially shut down and had to be delayed due to the pandemic, of course. Assuming most of your work had already been done pre-pandemic and you had already booked people for the 6th season, how did this shutdown and this delay influence the construction of this season and your process in particular? I'll send this your way, Pamela.
Yeah, it definitely did, because such a large gap of time had passed. So perhaps people that we spoke to pre-pandemic, their situation and circumstances had changed post-pandemic, like most of us. Or we thought, oh no, the world has changed as we know it. We need to tell stories that reflect what's just happened this past year. So we definitely had to pivot. We definitely had to do some new casting. But now we're done filming and I'm so excited for everyone to see it.
That's great. And since we very often obviously talk about the negative impact of the pandemic, which is unequivocal. But what are some of the upsides of the pandemic that might have been reflected in production? Because sometimes I feel like we've all gone through a learning process throughout this past year. Is there something in your process that you felt like you had never discovered before, or had just never seen before?
Allie. we typically do a lot of our casting on Zoom and Skype, so that wasn't a change for us like the rest of the world. So we're like, oh, we got this, we're used to it. Something that did change on the casting side is our boots on the ground casting post-COVID went away. So we weren't able to do that. Thankfully, we did get to go down to Texas before the pandemic, but after, no. So we didn't get to go into those new people's homes and meet people one-on-one and hug. I miss hugs.
Yeah.
I do think people spent a lot of time looking inward. I didn't work on this past season, so I can't specifically speak to it, but, reflecting and kind of figuring out, is my life going in the way that I, want it to, has brought more people to the table in casting in general. Being open and honest, they've spent so much time alone or with one or two people that they've had to look inward. And I think that's a great thing. And I do think that our casting is shifting because of that.
Yeah, absolutely. And since your casting is shifting and the world has shifted, is there something in particular that you would like to explore in upcoming installments, whether that be a location or a specific situation? Is there something, an interest that has developed throughout the past year in particular?
I think it would be, I don't know when or how, but I think it would be really exciting to go global again. We did our Japan season, and I think that just like the world on a global level needs more Queer Eye. So international seasons, I hope, will come our way soon.
Yeah, I really like exploring, like families and heroes who don't always speak English either, and just learning about different cultures and how, people express themselves in different ways. Like, I'm all about subtitles. Like I'm with Han, more international seasons. I would love to work on and watch, frankly.
That would be absolutely fascinating. Well, thank you so much, Pamela and Ali, for joining today. To our viewers, make sure to check out the 5th season of Queer Eye on Netflix if you haven't already, and make sure to click subscribe before you leave. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.